Just brutal.
That's cold.
Cold.
That's cold, Ken.
It is. But she takes over his office.
Oh, she takes it over.
She takes it over.
We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. She makes that office her own, Ken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you are watching part 2 of tonight's 3-part show. We just finished part 1, where we both did a tasting, or I should say a comparo, of Eagle Rare 10-year bourbon and Russell's Reserve 10-year bourbon. And Ken, I feel a little bad for the 4 fans of ours that were watching or listening, because that comparison was a bust. We basically, it resulted in an inconclusive result.
It was a train wreck. Not expected at all. Let's call it what it is.
And just interesting how going from one to another and back, how much the taste can change.
Yeah.
As you have continued to enjoy some additional sips since that initial tasting, does it change your opinion at all?
No, it's pretty much the same. I'm drinking it because it's in front of me. And I want to be drinking some bourbon.
And bourbon's always good.
And bourbon's good. I can't, it's bourbon. I can tell it's bourbon. It's good. But I can't get into any fine details about the taste that I'm experiencing.
Yeah, it's
not
really
fair.
interesting how tasting 2 side by side has just completely destroyed my palate.
Yeah. I'm going to have to remember that. I think it's good to pick a bourbon, even if you're out in the times when we're able to go out. Just remember, stick to one. That's what I'm taking from this.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to do some research because I don't know if this is a known thing that we have somehow missed. And again, I don't recall encountering that when we did the Johnny Walker comparison, but tonight it was definitely a bust.
Maybe there's a magic neutralizer that we don't know about, that when you're doing something like this that you can take and it just wipes everything out, because water didn't do the trick.
Right, like when you go in and you smell a perfume or a cologne and then they have coffee beans.
That's right.
Clear your palate. Yeah, maybe. All right, we'll look into that. Before we jump into tonight's episode of Sons, I want to remind everyone, please like and subscribe. Click the little bell at the top so you don't miss any future shows. And again, please leave your questions and comments in the comment section below, or you can email your questions to us at ask@bourbonbros, that's BROS.TV. And if your question doesn't suck, we may answer it on a future show. And as Ken likes to say, at this point, if you just send us a question, it's probably going to get answered on a future show. All right, let's get into tonight's discussion of Sons of Anarchy, Season 1, Episode 10, titled Better Half. Ken, we're into November now. This originally aired November 5th, 2008, and it was written by Pat Charles.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed this episode. I thought there was more comedy than, the last 1 or 2 episodes that we've seen. It wasn't overly complex to follow the plot. We got reintroduced to some recurring characters, and we saw Otto again. Cherry/Rita is in the picture. We'll get into that.
Yep.
I thought it was I was entertained by it.
Yeah, I thought the episode was very strong as well. We have Agent Stahl back, and the one-liners are back with her.
Mm-hmm. Lots of them.
The plots are thickening across many of the recurring storylines. It's a strong episode.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Let's quickly go through the synopsis, and we'll talk about if there's any new character introductions, and then we'll cover the main storylines, and then we can kind of get into our favorite moments of the episode. From a synopsis standpoint, Stahl and the ATF take over the Charming police station.
Mm-hmm.
So they're back and they're taking over. Stahl puts pressure on the women of Sam Crow in an attempt to build a RICO case. With the ATF back in town, Sam Crow has to help Cameron get out of Charming.
Mm-hmm.
Agent Stahl meets Otto for the first time and tries to negotiate a deal.
Right.
Otto shows Stahl what it's like to be in the slammer. Ken.
Yeah, good one. We'll get to that. We'll clarify that.
Donna prepares to leave Opie once and for all, and Opie struggles to keep his head in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Cherry, which you have already mentioned, reveals her real name along with the checkered past.
Mm-hmm.
And Jax discovers an unlikely hookup at the police station.
Yeah. He sure does.
So that's the synopsis, Ken. Any new characters in this episode?
That's a good summary. I don't think there was any quote unquote new characters. I mean, Cherry's been renamed, but it's still Cherry.
Yes. So her name is Rita.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, I believe she mentioned to Half Sack at one point in the episode that she really prefers Cherry.
Yeah.
And we find out where the name Cherry came from.
Right.
Do you recall?
No. I
It's
don't.
the name of her dog.
That's right. How'd I miss that?
So
That's right. It was at the end. I do recall. We'll get to that.
I knew if I jog your memory, you'd remember.
Yeah. I'm enjoying the bourbon.
You keep chasing that that goal of figuring out which one you like better. And meanwhile,
I am.
You're
I
sitting
am.
there double fisting Russell's and
Mm-hmm.
Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's talk storylines. This was a little bit harder to categorize because I always like to look at kind of what's the episodic, story of the week versus the ongoing. But most of these, and maybe this is one of the reasons the episode is so enjoyable, a lot of this episode revolves around ongoing storylines and moving them forward, which I think is always kind of a sense of satisfaction as a viewer when those storylines get advanced.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of kind of story of the week, we have the women of Sam Crow getting arrested, right?
Yeah.
And we have Cherry's checkered past catching up with her,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was, for me, tell me if you disagree, but those to me were the only two real kind of story of the week storylines. Everything else
everything
were
else
ongoing.
was ongoing. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, all of the female parts, quote unquote, better half. I think that's where it got its name.
Yes, great pull.
Mm-hmm. Was the being in quote unquote arrested, interrogated, that kind of a thing, and we'll get into why.
Yes.
Why we think that is.
So let's quickly cover the kind of ongoing storylines, and then we can jump into our top moments.
Sure.
So I think the main major ongoing storyline that's kind of the common thread for this episode and is the basis of the title, as you said, is Agent Stahl continuing to pursue and take down Sam Crow.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, you have the continuing storyline of Jax and Tara.
Yeah.
You have the continuing storyline of Opie and Donna.
Yeah.
You have the continuing storyline of Cherry and Half Sack.
Mm-hmm.
And although it's been a little bit more in dribs and drabs, you have Otto and Luann.
Yep. You sure
Right.
do.
So before we get into our top moments, I just want to take a step back. Like you mentioned that Stahl going after the women of Sam Crow is kind of where the episode gets its name, Better Half.
Mm-hmm.
To take that another level, I think the overall kind of theme of this episode is it's really about relationships.
Okay.
And if you look at the ongoing storylines, right, with the exception of Agent Stahl trying to take down Sam Crow, it's really about Jackson Tara, Tara and Gemma, Opie and Donna, Cherry and Half Sack, Otto and Luann. It's all these relationships.
Yeah. Good catch. It's
So
deep. It's deep. I'll give it to you.
Very, very interesting as you kind of look at ultimately what stood out to me throughout this episode is it was the dynamics of these relationships and how they continue to evolve as the season moves along. And, this being show 10, after this, there's only 3 more and we finish up season 1. So that tells you a finale to the season is coming.
Yep. There's a lot coming.
And you can feel things are starting to come to that fever pitch. Like, there's another shoe that's about to drop.
Right.
So let's talk about some of our top moments, and Ken, I'm going to let you kick things off.
Okay.
What do you want to start off with?
Let's start off with what kind of occurs at the beginning. I'll call it Viagra poppers and blow. I don't know if you remember this, but the episode kind of starts off. It's Agent Stahl's her first victim. She shows up at the porn studio, and she visits Luann, and she's looking for a reason to shut it down and arrest her, and she does that.
Viagra, poppers, blow. Tools of the trade?
This is bullshit.
No, actually, it's possession, maybe even intent to distribute. Shut it down. That's a wrap for Cecil B. DeMilf.
I don't know if you remember, but Agent Stahl takes Luann in and arrests her and takes her in for questioning.
Yes. And again, this is I think a very smart move by Stahl, right? She knows that Sam Crow as a club, they're very similar in the sense similar to organized crime in the sense that you don't rat, right? Like you take your lumps. If you get caught and you get arrested, you do your time, but you don't rat. Stahl has figured out that the most vulnerable people within the organization are the significant others, the better halves.
Right. And in particular, I think she's going after the ones that have the most to lose.
Yes. And the ones that are the least hardened to be able, and most fearful of going to prison. Right. And smart, right? And I think Gemma even acknowledges that in their scene together, which we'll talk about later.
She does. And I think to summarize, I mean, the thing that's throughout this episode is Agent Stahl is trying to use this RICO Act, which is Racketeering, Influence, Corrupt Organization Act, against Sam Crow to bring them down. And so she's looking to dig up dirt. Yep. And it can be current dirt, old dirt, just dirt, doesn't really matter. And
that's right.
That's what she's doing. Is she starts off in this first scene with Luann. She finds a little bit of illegitimate, illegal business, or something that she can use to her benefit.
Which would be the Viagra, the poppers, and the blow.
Exactly. There you go. Not to mention the porn. Who knows? But that's what she gets her on. So that's where it starts. I thought it was a little bit of comedic value, just the one-liners from Agent Stahl.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that in addition to that, one of the things that kind of tease up this episode and Stahl kind of going on this run to gather up all of the better halves, she also takes over the charming police station and sends Unser packing on a bit of a leave.
Escort Chief Unser out. He poses a security risk to my investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
You scrawny, uptight bitch. You don't know shit about me or this town.
And again, right off the bat, we get some one-liners from good old Agent Stahl.
Why don't you take a little downtime, Wayne? Play golf, go fishing, get around a chemo. Relax.
Let's go.
Just brutal.
That's cold. That's cold, Ken.
It is. But she takes over his office.
Oh, she takes it over.
She takes it over.
We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. She makes that office her own, Ken.
Yeah.
All right. So we know that Agent Stahl's going after the women of Sam Crow, and I think that basically is Donna, Tara, Gemma, Luann, and Cherry/Rita.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we've got that. I know we've got more to cover there, but let's move on. I'm going to bring up a what I call never mix sex and religion.
Okay.
And this was when Gemma was kind of taking care of Cameron in the cabin.
Okay.
As he was recuperating from his gun wound.
He was at the cabin. And you're hiding him there.
That's right. And she walks in and Cameron is praying. He has the rosary. He's praying. And you can just tell that Gemma is uncomfortable.
Do you believe in God, Gemma?
I believe in family.
Think that's enough?
You can see how uncomfortable she is. And I suspect that where this comes from is she's done a lot of bad things over the course of her life. And so the thought of religion and having to confront your past is not an area that Gemma wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And she justifies what she does for her family, hence her reply, right? She doesn't want to acknowledge the question and instead simply responds with, I believe in family.
Yeah.
And she's looking for ways to get out of the conversation. And she finds an interesting and somewhat funny way to move the conversation off of religion, which is why I called this Never Mix Sex and Religion. Do you remember the conversation?
I think I know where you're going with this.
So Cameron basically tries to say that, there can be something very freeing from praying, even though he believes that he's not going to be forgiven for his sins and will likely go to hell. And he offers the rosary to Gemma.
A few acts of contrition could make you feel good too, love.
There's only one way these beads could make me feel good. Love. And it involves a whole different act.
Oh, Gemma. I think the conversation on religion ended after that.
I think it did. I think that's where the scene ended.
Yes. All right, you're up. What do you got next?
I think going back to the story, the dialogue that's happening between Opie and Donna, I think that really came to a head in this episode for me.
Yeah.
I think this was a moment where Opie just kind of accepts it. Like he is laying down what he is comfortable doing, how he wants to live his life. And he shows up back at the house. He got paid from the attempted hit. The port commissioner, right? He got
He botched.
He botched. He got paid
A lot of
anyway.
balls asking for payment.
I know. I was wondering,
And he knows, right? This is desperation for him.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't want to ask.
No, he doesn't. But he gets it. They don't have any problem paying him. He goes home. He shows up at home. Looks like Donna's packing, and he just lays it out to her.
This should cover the mortgage. Put a dent in some of the bills. Why did you stay?
What do you mean?
When I was inside, why the hell didn't you get out 5 years ago?
And he basically tells her if she's not comfortable with this, she can continue packing.
Yeah, and I suspect, again, I don't know, but I suspect that, knowing how involved Kurt is, even though he doesn't necessarily write every episode, he's such a hands-on creator. I have to believe this comes from his own experience in relationships. And it feels so authentic in the sense that for episodes 1 through 9, it's been nothing but Opie fighting to find a way to keep his marriage together.
Mm-hmm.
And also he knows that part of that is making ends meet. And the answer to that is Sam Crow. And again, we've both been there. I think everyone has been there. You get to that point where all you're doing is fighting and searching for a way to save it. And you finally get to a point where you feel like you've done everything you can do and you're just done.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I think we've reached with Opie is he's now gotten to the point where he's just done. He feels like he's beating his head against the wall. He's not making any progress and he's basically done fighting.
And you can see also that, Donna still very much loves him and wants to be with him. Stahl shows up and questions her and asks her if she's aware of any illegal activity. And she kind of says, look, even if I did know of anything, I'm not going to tell you. Like she's still committed to him. But you're right. I think Opie he's made his decision. He's kind of firm in this episode. He's made his decision.
So I want to talk just briefly about a very small moment, and then I'm going to hand it over to you to get us through the first half of the episode. There was a scene, I'm sure you remember it. There was a scene in the hospital after Jax meets with Tara where he's leaving the hospital as Stahl is arriving to question Tara.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this slow-mo of both of them walking down the hallway and just kind of staring at one another as they walk closer and closer and eventually past one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very kind of cinematic moment. And what I really liked about it is, on the surface, as Jax is approaching Stahl and he knows who she is, he's got this shit-eating grin on his face, like, I've got the upper hand, you've got nothing, and I'm laughing at you trying to take us down.
Right. And she had just questioned Tara. She was leaving.
You're right.
Yeah, that's right. She's leaving. He's showing up.
Yep.
He's showing up.
And so Stahl has a little bit of a smirk as well, because she knows she's going after the women. She's going after a RICO case. And this very well could take the club down.
Mm-hmm.
So without any words spoken, they're both feeling like they have the upper hand. And there's very much kind of a bravado from both of them as they walk down the hall. But I don't know if you picked this up. The moment they pass, Jax turns and looks behind him, and his expression has changed. He went from this kind of confident, like, give me your best shot. And then he turns with this worried look, like, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of like, what are you up to? And I liked it. I liked the way that kind of publicly to her, he shows this infallible, I'm not scared. But then you see the reality once they pass, and he's in a moment where he is private and not necessarily exposed, and he shows his true concern. Mm-hmm. And obviously the assumption is he's worried about Tara, and he's curious what Stahl's up to.
Yeah. Good read. I didn't catch that. I'm going to go back and look at that.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's a good little moment. It's quick, but it's a good moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 5. Take us to the halfway point, Ken.
Well, another one that jumps out to me is when Agent Stahl meets. She shows up at the convenience store where Cherry/Rita is telling Gemma her story.
Yes.
About her past.
Yes, when Cherry's coming clean.
When she's coming clean. We'll get into that later. But we'll call this, I'll take innuendo for $500, Alex, to the late Alex Trebek.
Yes.
But there was a line in there where the dialogue between Gemma and Stahl was just very entertaining to me.
So strong.
Gemma she's reading the whole situation. She makes comment to Stahl, like, going after the better halves. That's very smart. That's what I would do. Something to that effect. But it comes to a head where Gemma looks at Stahl, and I think she says,
You might want to unscrew that penis sometimes. It's fun being a girl. If you want me, you know where I live.
There's so many things I love about this scene, Ken. And again, you're talking about two great women delivering exceptional performances.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough for a performance to stand up next to Katie Seagal's performance, and I thought Ali did a great job with this. It's a great scene, and I love the savvy that Gemma is able to display. And again, they don't dumb it down for you, but the fact that nothing has been explained to Gemma, and she's already figured out what she's doing. Mm-hmm. You're going after the women, right? You're trying to leverage them. And yeah, that's smart. That's what I would do, right? The fact that she's figured it out really shows how bright Gemma is. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, that scene where they're like nose to nose, Ken. Mm-hmm. And Gemma is, again, delivering these lines in both a threat and somewhat of a sexual undertone at the same time.
Trying to provoke her a little.
And you see the reaction from Agent Stahl, which, again, without any words being said, like she's almost she almost admires Gemma and just like she's a badass. She's not afraid. And that kind of reminds her of herself. And there's a little bit of a mutual respect there, I think. It was just a great scene, and the way that they played off of one another. The chemistry was great. The way it was shot, the writing. It was just a really great scene.
I couldn't agree more. So, I think that wraps up this first part.
Yeah, that's going to do it for part 2. Real quickly, again, for those of you watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. Check out our channel for more shows, and then be sure to join us for part 3, where we're going to continue to enjoy a little Eagle Rare or Russells, depending on our mood, continue to destroy our palate, but we will enjoy some bourbon, and then we will wrap up our discussion of Sons of Anarchy Season 1, Episode 10, titled Better Half. Stay with us.